Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
And we're back live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning. Good morning, my friend. Thank you for coming on board and joining us. It is the Michael Dukes Show, this beautiful, beautiful Tuesday, sun peeking out over the horizon. I told you yesterday was going to turn out to be nice, and it was true. Today looks like it's going to be another beauty down here on top of the world in Homer, Alaska. We're ready to dive into it for Tuesday. We've got a lot of stuff planned for you this morning, including in hour one, Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. He is waiting in the wings for us here, ready to jump into the weekly top three with some interesting topics, including the Permanent Fund Corporation and, of course, the hypocrisy that is Alaska. I mean, we could make a whole show of nothing but the hypocrisy that is Alaska lately. It's 100% truth. We're going to talk with Brad here in just a second. In hour two, we're finally going to get into that. I'm going to have to restrain myself from commenting on a lot of Brad's stuff in hour one because it's usually what I do. But we're going to finally get into that interview with Galen Druke and Lisa Murkowski. I've been wanting to talk about that since last week, and we finally are going to get to it this morning. It's going to take probably the full 2 segments, so we're going to go through it. It's interesting because I agree with her on some things. I came away with a little bit of a better understanding of Lisa Murkowski when I watched this interview. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to finish up with Chris Story, of course, for the end of the show this morning. So that's the full rundown. Let's get to it. I don't have any more time. Quick reminder, Friday, obviously the 4th of July, the show will be off the air. We'll have alternate programming in Fairbanks and down on the peninsula and across the rest of the state where the show plays. Because I will be in Soldovia emceeing whatever they have me emceeing. I'm supposed to be doing all kinds of stuff down there. So whatever. I don't know. They said we have pancakes, and I said, I'm on board. Whatever it is, I'm on board. It's all good. And so there we go. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top three. This is where we get to pin stuff and pick stuff apart and talk about all different kinds of great stuff. And Brad joins us this morning from a disclosed secret location, Cape Breton, out in his favorite part of the world, as he joins us today to talk about it. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Michael, I'm doing great today, and we truly are broadcasting around the world. We're at least to the East Coast of North America today.
Yeah, you're all the way out, Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, like way out you could see the other side of the world from there.
I'm as far east as you can go in Nova Scotia, certainly, but Newfoundland may go a little bit further to the east, but I'm way the hell out here.
Yeah, you're way out there, and I'm way down here on this side of the world. So it's kind of crazy talking half a world away. I love it. All right, Brad. Well, let's dive into it. You got some good stuff today. some stuff that I continue to shake my head at, but we're going to get started, and we're going to start off with one of our favorite topics, which is the hypocrisy that happens in Alaska every single day. It's astonishing. So get us started here.
Well, what triggered me was the op-ed that Bryce Edgman and Kathy Giesel wrote in the New York Times to try to motivate Lisa Murkowski to support maintaining Medicaid and SNAP food stamps benefits as the national bill went through. And Giesel and Edgman's editorial was this long screed about how Alaska couldn't live without Medicaid and SNAP, that it would have all sorts of bad effects on Alaska and on Alaska middle and lower income Alaska families and on Alaska villages, and that the federal government had to maintain those programs at full speed, at least for Alaska, or else Alaska would basically just crumble and blow away. And as I read through this, well, there was a similar op-ed in the ADN by Representative Genevieve Mina, that the headline of which was "Alaskans will lose under proposed SNAP and Medicaid cuts." It was just a sort of a full bore editorial onslaught by those in the legislature about the horrors of the federal government cutting back on those payments to Alaska. And as I read it, I just couldn't restrain myself, just laughing at the hypocrisy that Edgman and Giesel and Mina and others who have commented, others from the legislature who have commented on this, were displaying. I mean, if they're so concerned about middle and lower income Alaska families, why are they using the revenue measure at home? Why, when they're at home, why are they using the revenue measure that has the largest adverse impact on middle and lower income Alaska families? Why are they using the revenue measure that, of all of the alternatives, is by far the most regressive, the most costly to Alaska families? Why are they using what Professor Matt Berman from ICER calls the most regressive tax ever proposed? Why are they using that at home if they're so concerned about middle and lower income Alaska families? And the answer is they're not. They're not concerned about middle and lower income Alaska families. What they're concerned about is maintaining these federal government programs that target certain categories of that, certain subsets of middle and lower income Alaska families, that target them for federal benefits. And what they're concerned about is that if those federal programs are taken away, that they are then going to have to confront spending state money to maintain those programs and cutting state money back from other programs that they favor. So it is not about middle and lower income Alaska families. It is not about maintaining the fabric of Alaska's social system. I think as one of these op-eds said, it is about maintaining federal government programs in order to preserve state money for other spending elsewhere. And the hypocrisy of them going on the New York Times and talking about this was just rich. Now, let me say this also, that the hypocrisy isn't confined just to one side, isn't confined just to the liberal side on this. Both Governor Dunleavy and Senator Sullivan have talked, about how wonderful the One Big Beautiful Bill is and how we ought to support the One Big Beautiful Bill. In response to the op-ed in the New York Times by Giesel and Edgman, Dunleavy posted on Twitter, or issued a press release or something, talking about how we ought to support the president and ought to support the One Big Beautiful Bill. Well, the One Big Beautiful Bill puts the federal government more in debt, $3 trillion additional in debt over the 10-year cycle, and increases the amount of national debt and the amount of the percent of national debt as a share of the economy going forward. It expands, the One Big Beautiful Bill expands the debt limit by $5 trillion. Put that in perspective, the current debt's about $35 trillion. So it expands the debt limit by an additional $5 trillion, about a seventh of the existing debt in one fell swoop. That's the biggest increase in the debt limit that we've ever seen in any legislation, and it's necessary in order to make room for this increase in national debt that's going to be caused, increase in deficits and increase in national debt that's going to be caused by the One Big Beautiful Bill. So there's hypocrisy going on both sides. Dunleavy talks about himself being a rock solid fiscal conservative. Sullivan talks about himself being a rock solid fiscal conservative. Yet they're supporting a bill that substantially increases both the national debt and the debt limit. So the hypocrisy from both sides is just sort of astounding. It starts with Giesel and Edgman railing on about how this is going to destroy the Alaska social fabric, when they themselves have done a lot to destroy the Alaska social fabric by cutting PFDs, but it extends over to the right as well with the governor and Senator Sullivan. And we'll see. The latest rumor out of D.C. is Senator Murkowski's reached a deal to preserve Medicaid for Alaska, and then she's going to vote for the bill, so she's going to vote for the debt increase as well. So we'll see if it extends to Murkowski as well. But the hypocrisy is just running rampant on both sides of the aisle over this.
Well, and you know what I found most interesting is that both in the New York Times article and in the article from Genevieve Mina, they both referenced the fact that, talking about Medicaid in Alaska, and the fact that 1/3 of they come right out and admit it. 1/3, 1 in 3 Alaskans are on Medicaid in one form or another. And they see absolutely nothing wrong with the fact that that's where it's at. Like it's a normal thing, and we should be a dependency state. I mean, that's the big thing. And then, as you said, on the other side, and this has always been my problem with Republicans in Congress, and this is where I've said that both parties are really to blame for everything at both the state and the national level. They have, they'll say this is the only way while they increase and spend us into oblivion. There is no fiscal restraint anymore. I was talking with JD Tuchili from Reason Magazine last week, and we both were the same mind, came to the same conclusion. They're going to drive this bus off the cliff one way or the other. And they're not slowing down. All the warning signs are there, the klaxons, the bells and whistles, the big billboards, bridge out ahead. And it just doesn't matter. They're just going to keep going until we reach the end. It doesn't matter. Either they don't believe it or they just don't care, as long as they get theirs between now and then.
That's the key, Michael. I mean, as long as they get theirs between now and then. I mean, the House bill increased the deficits, increased the long-term deficits, increased the national debt. And so it was problematic when it came out of the House. The Senate, if you look at the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget Analysis, the Senate is increasing the deficits and the national debt beyond what the House did. It'll be interesting to see when this goes back to the House, if it gets out of the Senate. It'll be interesting when it goes back to the House what the response of the House Freedom Caucus is, because they have said all along that they went to their absolute limit. They were pushed to their absolute limit. Chip Roy and others said they were pushed to their absolute limit in the amount of deficits and national debt that was coming out of the House bill. They would not stand for another dime. Goes over to the Senate, gets larded up even more with more tax breaks that reduce revenue, with more spending that increases spending, and with higher deficits. It'll be interesting to see when it comes back over to the House what they do. I mean, the MO so far is that the fiscal conservatives have talked a good game, but when push comes to shove, they wilt, and they vote for the bill Ron Johnson over on the Senate side, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, said, he absolutely would not vote for increasing the deficit. He absolutely thought that this bill was wrong, and that he didn't see how to get cleared by July 4th. There needed to be a lot of work to get to reduce the deficit impact of the bill. Yep, last night he caved.
Right. He reversed his vote. Yeah. No, it's interesting to watch. We're rapidly approaching that point to where we're not going to be able to pull out of the nosedive because we just don't have enough glide path left to do that, which is unfortunate, especially since we can see it coming and we know. And it would be one thing to be, like I've said many times, not on the train, eating popcorn, watching it go over the tracks. Unfortunately, we're in the second car right behind the locomotive watching it go over the tracks, and that's a whole different deal.
And it's not like there aren't people out there sticking to their position. Rand Paul is sticking to his position. He's a no vote. He said he's a no vote all along, as long as and his point is the increase in the debt limit by $5 trillion. So you can it's enough to stuff this bill in, and then they continue spending on top of the continued deficits on top of that. So I mean, right. Rand Paul has put a stake in the ground and stands with it. It's people like Sullivan and Dunleavy and Ron Johnson and others who are just wandering off the reservation.
We're talking with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. We're going to move on to number 2. The PFC is back in the news, the Permanent Fund Corporation. That'll be our topic up next. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more. Brad Keithley right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, in the break right now. Bradley, you got some sun, my friend. Look at you. You're like a cooked egg. What, you out there enjoying the sunshine? What's happening?
I am. We have a lot of sunshine out here, but it's also a little bit the lighting that I'm using. It's very bright. My plan was to have this window open so you can see the beautiful scenery, but it's very bright here, and so I've sort of had to close in the studio or close in the kitchen. This is actually a kitchen to do the broadcast, and so the lighting's a little off.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, no, but definitely it's nice when you get a chance to get outside and enjoy yourself. You got a lot of music this weekend? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, so these 2 weeks, the Kitchen Fest started on Friday, and there's a concert every day for a week, and then this is the tourist time of the year, so there's a lot of music around the island. So I'll continue to take advantage of that. I'm going to be here through the remainder of this week and through most of next week. So I'll be doing this again from here next week.
Well, that'll be good. That'll be a fun time will be had by all. Nothing like a little music to make the soul dance. Yep. So it's good stuff. This has been part of the problem, Brad, overall. We had hoped that DOGE would take a bigger bite out of government spending than it has. They did find some stuff. There's no doubt about it. But it just didn't go far enough. It didn't go as far as the American people wanted. And it was all the pushback of the powers that be, Washington, the establishment, the bureaucracy. It was a continual fight, against it. And again, we've had all the warnings. We have all the warning signs that the bridge is out and we have to slow down. And even now, the Republicans, and I know that this is drawing some ire from the listeners when I say that, but this bill is not great. Let me just say that it is not great. Is it better than something that maybe Kamala Harris would have come up with? Absolutely. I'm not saying that it's not, but it's not great. And now we've even lost any other reason. Now that they've stripped out all the gun stuff and everything else, I've lost any interest in this thing really moving forward, because again, it's $3 trillion in costs. No matter how they try and run the accounting on it, it's still $3 trillion, and it increases the debt. and we're not facing the reality that we just can't spend what we don't have.
Yeah, and the thing to keep focusing on, and I publish these numbers every Sunday morning. The thing to keep focusing on is what's going on with the pricing of the bonds, government bonds. Government bonds used to be 2% or 1% or 2 and a fraction, but now they're consistently over 4%, and that's an indication that against inflation of about 2%. So you're pricing in a significant premium. These downgrades that the U.S. has had they're reflective of the problem. They're not creating the problem. They're reflective of the problem. And the problem is that the risk premium that is now being demanded in U.S. government bonds is significant. And so you've got the fact that you're paying that interest cost for these government bonds is huge. I mean, as you're adding on more debt, you're paying more in interest. Interest now outstrips the cost of interest. Now outstrips the defense spending, and so what we're going to find is more and more. A not insignificant part of the reason for the $5 trillion increase in the debt limit is not as much spending in some of the 3 trillion increase in the 10-year deficit as a result of this bill is not solely confined to increased spending. It's increased interest costs that are coming from the jump from 2% to 4%. So as that continues to work through, costs continue to go up.
We're going to spend $1.2 trillion on debt service this year. 1.2 trillion, fully almost a quarter of our revenue on debt service. That's when you should really know that there's a problem going on. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. If you would like and share, like and follow, do all that stuff. Let's get back to it. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I am not. I'm a perfect angel. I don't know who said that I'm a pain in anything. I'm a soothing balm to your soul. That's what I am. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Welcome back for all the folks that just joined us here a little bit early. We appreciate you coming on board. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is our guest, and we are ready to jump into number 2, which has the PFC, the Permanent Fund Corporation, is now back in the news, patting themselves on their own back, doing a great job. That's what they say. Brad, what do you got here for me?
So let's set the basics here, because I think it's increasingly important to understand what the difference here. The permanent fund is a bunch of money, is a bunch of investments. That it is a pot of money. The Permanent Fund Corporation, which is what I'm going to be talking about mostly here, the Permanent Fund Corporation is the manager of that fund. It's like your personal investment manager. They're the ones responsible for managing the fund. Permanent Fund Corporation is set up by the Constitution. The board members are appointed by the governor. It is a government body, but what it's doing is managing the fund. The fund can be managed in a lot of different ways. That pot of money can be managed in a lot of different ways, some bad, some good, but it's the Permanent Fund Corporation that's making the decisions on how to manage it. So this past couple of weeks, or this past week, we've had a couple of promotional pieces published by the Permanent Fund Corporation about how great a job they're doing. One appears in Must Read Alaska. The headline is like a headline earlier, last month now, since this is July 1st, but it's another headline that says Alaska Permanent Fund sets another new all-time high, second time this month. Is the must-read piece, which basically is just a regurgitation of a press release issued by the Permanent Fund Corporation. And then Devin Mitchell, who's the executive director of the Permanent Fund Corporation, the manager of the the investments made by the Permanent Fund, or how the permanent fund's used, wrote an op-ed piece that is appearing in all the state's papers. This particular one that I've got up in front of me is from the Alaska Beacon, but it's also in the ADN. It's even down in the Ketchikan Daily News. The title of it is "The Key to a Stronger Alaska Permanent Fund is Diversification." And Devin also references the fact that the permanent fund is at a higher level than it has been previously. But what neither of these articles do is talk about the returns that the Permanent Fund Corporation is achieving from its management of the permanent fund, and compare those returns to either the benchmarks that the Permanent Fund Corporation itself has set up, or external methods of looking at what the permanent fund, how the Permanent Fund Corporation is performing, looking at various measures in the market. So we are doing that. Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets are doing that. Sustainable Budgets are doing that on an ongoing basis. And so let's look at those numbers. Let's flip to the other one first. Let's take this one second. Let's look at those numbers of how the permanent fund is doing. This is a chart that we do that looks at the permanent fund, the returns achieved by the permanent fund in the left-hand column, and then the returns achieved by the S&P 500, investing in an S&P 500 exchange-traded fund in the second column. The total fund return objective is the objective necessary to produce the 5% earnings above inflation, the 5% earnings that are being used to calculate the POMV. So it's the amount necessary to generate the returns necessary to fund the POMV and make sure that the POMV is staying on the positive side. And then on the right-hand column, there's other PFC benchmarks that the Permanent Fund Corporation establishes, and they are one of those. The passive index benchmark is one I'll talk about in a second. But consistently, if you look at these numbers, what you're seeing is the permanent fund is earning returns that are below not only what the market calculations are, the S&P 500, but below what the PFC's own benchmarks are telling it should be earning, and below what's necessary to pay for the POMV draw on an ongoing basis. If you look at down toward the bottom, you'll see a line that says right above the gray that says FY25 fiscal year to date through the end of May. You'll see the PFC's earned a return of 6.59%. Over that same period, the S&P has earned a return of 9.39. The total fund return objective, the amount necessary to fund the POMV, is 6.89, more than what the permanent fund earned. The performance benchmark, the benchmark that the Permanent Fund Corporation itself has set up to measure how it's doing compared to its peer groups, investors, 6.64% more than what the permanent fund's earning. And if you look at the passive index benchmark, which is, what if we just put all this on autopilot? What if we just invested it in passive investments that we don't have to day-to-day manage? We don't have to spend a lot of money to manage. They just sort of work on autopilot. Even looking at the passive index benchmark that the permanent fund uses as their own benchmark, they get to pick their benchmarks. They use this one. It's 9.6%, fully 3% more than the permanent fund's earning. If you look at the averages, the 5-year average, the permanent fund's earning less. The Permanent Fund Corporation is earning less on the permanent fund than the S&P 500 would. It's earning less than what's necessary than the total fund return objective, what's necessary to fund the POMV on a 5-year basis. It's earning a little bit more than the performance benchmark in the passive index benchmark on a 5-year basis. But if you look at the 3-year average and the 1-year average, the rolling 12 months to date, the Permanent Fund Corporation is behind, seriously behind, not only the Vanguard S&P 500, the ETF, but also behind what's necessary to fund the POMV, what the performance benchmark that they use, and behind the passive index benchmark. And that continues on through the 1-year average. So what these press releases carefully talk about is, yes, we've hit a high, and yes, we're doing great on our investment strategy according to Devin, but they don't talk about these return numbers, and you can see by these return numbers they aren't doing very well. Keep in mind the passive index benchmark, and let's flip over to the second slide. This is the one that really drives me crazy. This is a calculation of how much the Permanent Fund Corporation is spending in order to manage the permanent fund, spending on its management and its fees, compared to the passive index benchmark. What it would be earning if it wasn't managed, if it wasn't engaged in this active management. And you can see consistently over the last period of time that the permanent fund, even after spending all this money, the permanent fund is earning less than it would earn if it put the permanent fund on autopilot, used the passive index. It's spending, and the calculations, I don't have them on here, but it's spending $880 million, nearly $1 billion on management and fees. 1%, we have the percentages under the column management incentive fees. It's spending nearly 1% annually, nearly 1% of the funds to produce, of the permanent fund, to produce returns that are less than what it would produce if it didn't have management at all, if it was using these the passive index benchmark. So it's spending 1% to earn less. It's spending $880 million to earn less than it would if it didn't have all this management and all this diversification that Devin talks about. We've calculated what that is, what the return on the fees is then. If you look at how much return they're getting out of these fees for the last 2 years, the 2023 and 2024, and so far 11 months on a rolling 12-month basis through the end of the third quarter. These are numbers through the third quarter, through March. And you look at on a rolling 12-month basis through the end of March, they're earning a negative return on the fees they're spending. The fees aren't even getting them back to break even with what they would earn against the passive benchmark. They're earning less than what they would against the passive benchmark. So we're spending a ton of money, spending $880 million a year, spending 1% of the permanent fund corpus, however you want to measure it. We're spending a ton of money to get substandard returns that are less than what we would get out of a passive index approach. So when you see these op-eds by the permanent fund, oh, we're higher than ever. Well, yeah, you're higher than ever, but you would be much, much higher. We'd be at $120 billion if we invested in the S&P, for example. Even a blind hog finds an acorn every once in a while, or whatever the phrase is. Yes, you're increasing some, but you're not increasing. You're not producing the returns anywhere near what you would be producing, even if you use your own passive index benchmark and shut down all of this management that you're claiming is necessary to run the fund. What's happened is the Permanent Fund Corporation is turned into a bureaucracy, a self-sustaining bureaucracy who gets to pick what it spends on, what it does, and whose fund managers get paid sort of regardless. And it's just turned into another government bureaucracy that's producing substandard results, significantly substandard results. And so when you look at the future of the permanent fund, if you listen to the PFC, oh, it's going to keep going up. Yeah, it's going to keep going up a little bit. I mean, even the blind hog finds the acorn, but it's not going up at the rate the market generally is going up, or what it would be going up, even if you use the passive index approach, and you took out all of the management. So these articles are nice puff pieces, but when you look at them and you don't see hard numbers about the returns that the permanent fund's achieving, that's a red flag that something going on. They don't want to talk about it because the numbers prove they aren't doing a job that's adequate even to the passive index benchmark.
And I think it's interesting that the news media, all news media, nobody is asking this question. Nobody is asking this question. Nobody is looking at the S&P, the Vanguard 500, and saying, well, sure, it's a little bit more volatile, but in the long run, it's pulling double the averages that the permanent fund has been pulling in and of itself. It may lose a little bit more in the short term, but it always gains a little bit more in the long term. I mean, it's doing double the numbers that we're seeing in the managed fund. Why are we spending all this? I mean, we had the commentary the other day about the Harvard Endowment Fund. It's pulling a 9+% return, and it's just running off the S&P. Why are we spending $1 billion a year managing a fund that's getting us a lesser return?
Yeah, and the answer is we're doing it because the Permanent Fund Corporation has turned into a bureaucracy, and it's really there's no control over the Permanent Fund Corporation. The governor appoints the board. The board members don't even have to be approved by the legislature. The governor appoints the board, and the board members he's appointed are political appointees, not investment specialists that you find in other states. So we're producing very subpar returns on an asset that we desperately need to be producing very healthy returns on.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We're returning with more right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brian asked the question, is anyone in the Juneau Clown Posse raising their oversized gloved hand to ask about the PFC question? And no, nobody's talking about this. Brad is the only person that I have seen that has talked about the returns on the permanent fund. And you can see the numbers right there in black and white, folks. Look at the 10-year average. 7.9% is what the fund has been returning. The S&P is almost 15%. And even when you look at the 5-year average down at the bottom, 9.5 to almost 16, 5.5 to almost 14.32%. That's almost 3 times in a 3-year average what the Permanent Fund Corporation has been returning. But nobody's talking about this. They kept saying, "Oh, we want it to be $100 billion, and then everything will be okay." Well, it could have been 120, and yet here's where we sit.
Yeah, the problem, Michael, I mean, interestingly enough, we're leaving more money on the table in the permanent fund, in terms of permanent fund returns. We're leaving more money on the table than we are with oil taxes. We're leaving more than, if you look over the next 10 years, we're going to have more money left behind by inadequate permanent fund returns than we are going to have left behind by substandard oil taxes. But the problem is you have to understand numbers, and you have to build a spreadsheet, and you have to look at the returns, because the Permanent Fund Corporation really isn't doing that for you. I mean, they put out a monthly report, but you have to sort of parse through the monthly report to understand relative numbers. And we evidently don't have anybody in Juneau, or have few in Juneau, that will dig into the numbers and understand. It's easy to castigate oil companies. Oh, oil companies aren't paying their fair share. Oh, oil companies aren't being fair to Alaska. Oh, we need to get more out of oil companies. It's easy to do that on a political level. It's harder on a political level to actually go through the numbers, understand the returns, and say, oh, our own permanent fund corporation has turned into a bureaucratic nightmare that's producing these inadequate returns. And so you have to understand the numbers to be able to say that. And people in Juneau just aren't digging into the numbers.
Yeah, and that's a real problem. I mean, we're like you said, leaving tons of money on the table with no other answers, and nobody else is bothering to bring this up. I brought it up. I brought it up to Bridget Wilson's campaign people. I don't know if they've reached out to you or not, but I mean, why aren't more people asking it? Why isn't Suzanne Downing asking it? Why isn't it, Nat Hers or James Brooks or somebody at the, why aren't these people asking this question? I mean, you've been out there talking about it long enough. We've been talking about this for 10 months now, I think, is when you first brought this up 10 months, a year ago. We've been talking about it the whole time. Why are we, why is nobody else asking this question?
Because you have to dig into the numbers and people, it's easier to
get the numbers. I'm just going to say, you've done the math for them. They can look at that and work backwards from that. They don't have to spend 15 hours pulling the numbers out. They could spend an hour confirming the numbers that you pulled out, right? I mean, you've already done the hard work. I just don't understand this.
Yeah, well, it's a mystery to me too. But you get these op-eds that say, I mean, they're able to say, oh, it's higher now than it's ever been. Well, yeah, it's higher now than it's ever been. It could have been, 50% higher if you would have invested it right. Yes, it is higher. Blind hog finds an acorn. You've struggled up a little bit, but you could be much higher. It's easy to say these things that Suzanne picks up on, or it's easy to write the op-ed that Devin wrote about, oh, we've diversified the fund to protect against risk, and we wouldn't want to do anything that's risky. Even has a little bit of risk. We want this solid, secure. It's solid mediocrity. What they've made permanent, what they've done is make sure they're mediocre on a permanent basis. This broad diversification investment program they've been on, make sure that everything cancels out everything else, and it just stays, sort of flat lines in terms of returns over time. Doesn't even keep up with the POMV draw over time. Doesn't keep up with their own passive index over time. But it's not very variable. It just sort of flat lines across time. And so he writes this op-ed that talks about, we just diversify and protect against risk. Tell me about your returns. Tell me about your returns compared to even your own passive index. Tell me about your returns compared to the POMV draw. Tell me about the returns compared to market measures like S&P 500. Nobody asked them to do that. They just all sort of accept, oh yeah, diversification. Okay. We accept being mediocre.
It's like more buzzwords. That's all it is more buzzwords. All right, Brad, you're starting to break up a little bit. I don't know what's going on, but we'll hold you through this last segment here and get things ready to rock and roll. Brad Keithley is our guest. Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. Let's get back to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we're back. Welcome back to the program, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Brad Keithley is our guest. The weekly top 3 continues. Final segment for today. It's all about some of these articles, Brad. Well, you got to have skin in the game. You got to put up or shut up. You got to, all these kind of phrases that we see here. And of course, they never account for tell me how cutting the PFD isn't skin in the game. Tell me how losing out on the economy isn't skin in the game. Tell me how all this stuff works. But this is the phraseology that's being used. What? Give me your thoughts here on skin in the game here.
Well, Charles Bettesworth, who's a well-known Fairbanks businessman and well-respected for good reason, Fairbanks businessman, wrote an op-ed in the Fairbanks News-Miner, the title of which is "If you want to invest in the business of Alaska, you better have skin in the game." And basically, what the article is we need people who are actively involved in the management of Alaska. And to get their attention, basically, we need taxes to generate the revenues and to have them start following the what's going on in Alaska and start pushing back on Alaska and start articulating where they want Alaska to go because they have skin in the game, and that it's important to have skin in the game to make these investments. I'm not going to argue with that point. I sometimes make the same point in a different way when I talk about if we want to push back on spending, we need to have all Alaskans, including the top 20% and the oil companies and non-resident industries, tourism and fishing. We need all of them pushing back on spending as well to achieve that. And that's sort of a variation on the argument that everybody needs to have skin in the game. Skin in the game does cause you to push back in a way that you haven't before. But here's where I get off track with Bettesworth. I mean, he talks about the permanent fund dividend and essentially says that cuts in the permanent fund dividend don't count as skin in the game. And so that's not generating the type of activity. That's not generating the type of involvement that he envisions we should be doing in order to help guide government. If you're in the top 20%, which Bettesworth is, that's your perspective. PFDs don't mean much to me. Cutting them doesn't affect me much. And so they shouldn't really count as skin in the game. I need something more real to get me involved, to make me involved in government. I need something more tangible. I need more of my income at risk by what's going on in government to make me get involved. Cutting PFDs don't really count. Well, that's the top 20% perspective, non-resident industry perspective, oil company perspective. But when you get to middle and lower income Alaska families, cutting PFDs takes a significant material share of their income and does count as skin in the game. They are pushing back. All these people we hear about, oh, you got to cut government spending, they're seeing it. Middle and lower income Alaska families are seeing it, seeing the impact of not controlling government spending by the dollars not reaching their pocket as a result of PFDs being diverted to pay for government. The ultimate concern I have is this: once we sort of use up the PFD, and government consumes all of it, if we get to that point, then we're going to be facing taxes. And the concern I have is that government will say, well, PFD cuts didn't count for anything, so you need to pay taxes. Middle and lower income Alaska families need to pay taxes on top of that because you haven't had any skin in the game so far. You really haven't had any involvement or any impact out of government spending. So we need to charge you taxes on top of eliminating your PFD or deeply cutting your PFD to get you involved. That's not right. PFD cuts should count as skin in the game by middle and lower income Alaska families. They are diverting enough of the income of middle and lower income Alaska families to make them involved. If you talk to middle and lower income Alaska families, as I do a lot, they talk about the fact that PFD cuts have hurt them, and they talk about, where's that money going? Is it going to the oil companies? Is it going to, all these government programs that have gotten set up? Is it going to, all of the construction contracts that have been let? Is it in the Alaska Airlines Center at UAA? I mean, they talk about the skin in the game that they've given up and where it's translated into government. So I'm going to say, Charles, that middle and lower income Alaska families do have skin in the game. They have been talking about these issues. You in the top 20% haven't, because it hasn't affected you. And yes, I agree that if we need more revenues, that it should come out of your hide. It should come out of your hide. It should come out of the oil companies. It should come out of the non-residents, as opposed to continuing to take more out of middle and lower income Alaska families, because they've already given a significant share.
Right. They've already given enough blood. You guys have all the blood that's left at this point, as a percentage of your income. Because you've run that chart. I mean, the percentage of income that the PFD takings have been in the lower, 40% of income earners is anywhere from, 11 to 25%, right, of their full and total income. It's a huge number compared to 1% or less in the upper 5 or 10%. I mean, it's a huge difference. It's
0.2% in the top 1% income bracket. The impact of PFD cuts, it's not noticeable. It's like, a variation in the stock market didn't go up quite as high today as we anticipated it would. But you're right, it is material, over 10% when you get to the middle and lower income bracket. So it is. I guess the another way to say it is, middle and lower income Alaska families are motivated. They're ready. It's the top 20%. They're ready to get government under control. It's the top 20%, the donor class and the oil companies and the non-resident industries, who are paying either a negligible amount in the top 20, in the case of the top 20%, or none in terms of increased cost of government in the case of the oil companies and the non-resident industries. They're the ones who are, just sort of, looking the other way while government continues to grow and spending continues to increase. They need to be motivated. I agree with that. But middle and lower income Alaska families, they're already motivated. And to discount PFD cuts as a motivation, to discount that as skin in the game, I think does a tremendous disservice to what's going on with middle and lower income Alaska families in that segment of the Alaska economy.
It's frustrating to watch, because we've been beating the same drum for so long on this, and it's just frustrating to watch. And the governor has not been much of a help. Although, I don't know if you watched the last week or so, the governor's put out now a second, two strongly worded letters where he takes people to task. If we'd had a strong governor this whole time, maybe we could have helped steer the ship in a little bit of a different direction, right? It's like all of a sudden he's found his anger switch, and he can say things that he wasn't saying before. I don't know what's going on, but we're down to 90 seconds here. Give us your final thoughts on this.
Everything that Dunleavy does is geared toward his race 2 years from now against Lisa. I mean, it has nothing to do with being a strong governor. He's gone into campaign mode for his Senate run against Lisa. So I mean, yeah, Mike, nice, thanks. But it's not effective, and it's not moving the legislature in the right direction. It's just positioning himself to claim to be something he's not, which is a fiscal conservative. It's positioning himself to have these claims when he runs against Lisa.
Well, that's sad. Thank you for giving me that piece of, I mean, it's the truth, but it is sad to see. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Brad's about to go face a week's worth of great music, so we hope he enjoys it. Brad, thanks for coming on board.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we're out of time. Next up, we've got that Galen Druke interview with Lisa Murkowski. We're going to dissect and more the Michael Duke Show. You're right. I mean, I spent all this time yesterday, and I really didn't even get to that point. But, I mean, here's the governor, railing against all these things that are going on. And I'm like, where has this guy been for the last 4 years, right? I mean, where's this guy been that's full of fire and brimstone? He took the teachers' organizations on in this latest letter that just came out yesterday. Where was this guy over the last 4 years? Taking his stand and being strong and everything else. And you're right. It's sad. This is all, I didn't look at it through the lens of this is posturing for the next big race. I just thought, okay, maybe he just finally found, some oomph or something. It's kind of crazy.
You may remember after the last election, when Dunleavy got reelected, you and I had a conversation about Dunleavy's going to come to a decision point. Is he going to want to cement his legacy as governor and do some hard things to get the state back on the right direction? Or is he going to start looking at his next race and posturing himself for the next race and not really being governor, but sort of positioning himself in what he says and what he does for the next race, which is against Lisa in 2 years. And he made a choice 4 years ago after he got elected to start positioning himself to go Hollywood in a way, to go DC, if you will, and start spending a lot of time out of state, talking about things that would get him national recognition and get him national fundraising, and not spending time in the state and not spending time to try to govern the state. So everything you're seeing now in these last 2 years is all about positioning himself for the run against Lisa. He's not trying to govern. I mean, if he was trying to govern, if he was trying to establish a legacy, he would have handled things a lot differently these last 2 years. He's just trying to position himself to run against Lisa.
That's, oh, damn it. I mean, it's so tough. I mean, there was such a golden opportunity here. And I think he could have, in my opinion, he could have done both. He could have been a strong governor and come away with a legacy and still had strong support going into a race against Lisa. But he chose instead to kind of pander and play this quiet game in this middle ground, maybe in the hopes of picking up some of the more moderate votes against Lisa or whatever. But I don't know. It's so frustrating to watch.
I think looking back, the recall scarred him. The recall that he had after the 2019 budget proposal. I think the recall scarred him in a way that looking back, he never really wanted to govern Alaska from that point forward, because governing it was too tough, and he got too much pushback, and he got too much negative response. So I think at that point he gave up governing. He ran for re-election because he could run for re-election, and he said some things during that re-election campaign that said, well, maybe he's going to want to establish a legacy. Maybe he'll come back in and actually govern. Turns out not. Turns out it was all positioning to go Hollywood, to get to DC, to position himself for national fundraising, and that's the way he's governed ever since the recall. He's not going to take positions that get him involved in another recall, another pushback for the recall, because that's too scarring on his future aspirations. He wants to sound tough. He wants to write letters that look tough, but he doesn't want to do the things that are necessary to get the state's fiscal situation under control.
Damn it, Brad. I'm just, I'm so hopeful. And then, but it's the truth. And that's the worst part. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, if you can convince him that actually being tough improves his odds against Lisa, that might work. But it's all built around that calculus. And that calculus isn't being made by Alaskans. It isn't being made by anybody in the governor's office.
Right.
It's being made by the advisors that he's bringing on to run the Senate race.
Right.
Against Lisa. So it's not, and they don't know much about Alaska. So it's like, might sound tough, sound like a fiscal conservative, but don't do anything that gets the pushback like a recall again.
Yeah. Again. Yeah. We see what's happening at the national level. We just spent, a whole segment talking about, the kind of the madness that's happening there. We see what's going on at the state level. One point, you kind of said, well, if the permanent fund goes, if we have $1 billion deficit, Brad, there is no permanent fund, right? That's a big chunk of that $1 billion is what's left of the permanent fund, and it'll all be gone. This is what we're facing in the near future. We're facing basically financial catastrophe for both. We got about a minute and a half.
Well, you're talking about the permanent fund dividend. There won't be a permanent fund dividend. There'll still be a permanent fund unless Devin and his crowd manage to run it into the ground.
Sure.
But there won't be a permanent fund dividend. And that's and so the legislature has figured out, the legislature who also doesn't want to make hard choices, the legislature's figured out that they won't get pushback from the top 20%. They won't get pushback from their donor class. Zach Fields is a perfect example of this. They won't get pushback as long as they take all the money from the permanent fund dividend, as long as they take it from middle and lower income Alaska families, because those are people who don't have voices. They don't have money to give to a campaign, so they'll continue taking it from them as opposed to taking it from the donor class. And so, yeah, that'll be what goes, and we'll see what happens beyond that. But Bettisworth has already tried to set up the argument that, permanent fund dividend cuts don't count, so we could have a very regressive sales tax, for example, to raise revenue that continues to shove the burden off on middle and lower income Alaska families. That's one of the next fights.
This is what you and I have been warning about for so long, is that if we don't talk about the type of taxation, they're going to force it down our throat and say, now it's time for you to pay your fair share. We know the PFD's gone, but that doesn't count, right? That's what's happening.
That's right.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. My friend, I wish you a very happy week of music and fun. Enjoy yourself, okay? You deserve it.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. I'll see you next week.
All right, thanks so much. Folks, we're out of time. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Wow. I mean, that was... I was so into it right up until the end, and then Brad just really kind of brought it all back to screaming reality that there is self-interest in all this kind of stuff. The governor, in his, like I said, he just put out, I talked about this letter he wrote here recently to the majority, and I was LB&A, whoever he wrote it to, talking about the pushback on SB 183. And now he wrote a blasting email to the Association of Alaska School Boards, which was also a very sternly worded letter. And I was like, where was this fire? Where was this passion before? And of course, now Brad, puts it all in perspective. And because I knew about this in the back of my mind, but I wasn't making the connection that, this was all about the next senatorial race where Dunleavy, runs against Lisa Murkowski. He's positioning himself to be the strong fiscal conservative, and which of course he's not. I'll just throw it out there. He's not a strong fiscal conservative after getting his hand slapped over the whole 2019 budget with Donna Ardwin, where he, made it was such a moderate cut. It was like 8 or 9% overall. It's significant, but it wasn't like it was draconian in the fact of we're cutting 25% of government. And then in the end, it ends up actually being an increase. We actually increased the budget by $80 million instead of cutting anything after it was all said and done. But this is, again, this overall is the problem. The problem is politicians of every ilk and every stripe. Now, not every politician, obviously, but we got a bunch of people in there that are just in it for the self-interest of getting reelected, having the power, getting the kudos, pats on the back for bringing home the bacon and doing whatever else, and not doing what is best for the state or best for the nation in the case of the national stuff, the big bills and everything else. The fact that we're, again, going to tack on another $5 trillion in deficit and then raise the debt ceiling and do all this kind of stuff. It's It's crazy. It's so frustrating. And of course, the poster child for this kind of behavior, in my opinion, is Lisa Murkowski. Now, interestingly enough, her new book is out, and you probably heard about it. Their new book is out, and her new book is all about making the hard choices in the face of overwhelming opposition, but still doing the right thing, right? That's the kind of the slug line of the book. But she's on a tour, talking to different people, including an interview that she did last week with Galen Druke. Now, this interview was very interesting. And my wife sent me this interview. She's like, you got to watch this. Because some of the headlines surrounding this interview, well, let me tell you what the main headline of this that came out of this interview was. Lisa Murkowski is willing to become an independent if the commies get 3 more seats in the Senate. That she's willing to jump ship. Well, first of all, even if that was 100% true, which after listening to the interview, it's kind of true. What that kind of synopsis. But even if it was true, would you really be that surprised? Would you really, based on her voting record and everything else, would you be that surprised? Okay. David just said, name me a politician, Michael, who does her best for the state and the nation. Oh, there's a handful. I mean, in the state here, I think, you got Rob Myers, you got Mike Shower, you've got Sarah Vance in the House who's trying to do her best. You've got, there's Kevin McCabe. There are a handful of politicians who I think, even when we may not agree with their vote on certain things, they're doing their best in their way to try and get it done. At the national level, you've got Thomas Massey, you've got Rand Paul. There's a handful of people, out of the Congress where there's 500 and something people. You probably have a dozen maybe or less that are kind of those people who does his or her best for the state or the nation, regardless of what that does for them, on their reelection chances. But again, overall, we have a problem with short-sightedness. That's the overall problem. And by short-sightedness, I mean mostly fiscal short-sightedness. Don't get me distracted though, David. Let me get back to where I was at. Galen Druke, this article. I've been wanting to get to this interview for a while. And so we're going to go through this interview here. We got about 30 minutes here, 25 minutes over the next 2 segments where we're going to go through this interview, and I'm going to pick it apart. And I want to say, first and foremost, I came out of this interview pleasantly surprised at her forthrightness, seeing her point of view, and understanding and agreeing in some ways with her point of view, but not with the way that she is trying to accomplish the things that she's trying to accomplish. Okay. So we're going to break into this. This is Senator Lisa Murkowski with Galen Druke, the interview from last week. This is, again, all part of her book tour. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to go back over here and turn it actually back up so you can hear it.
Say Democrats win 3 seats in the next midterm election in the Senate, and they say, we're going to let you pass bills that benefit Alaskans if you caucus with us. You don't have to become a Democrat. You can be an independent. But if you caucus with us and provide the sort of 4th vote that we need to get from where we are now, and you can pass legislation that helps Alaskans, would you do it?
It's an interesting hypothetical.
Now, let me just say first, this was kind of a gotcha question. Not gotcha, but I mean, it was definitely meant to highlight his, to bring out his cred and to highlight his podcast, to make sure that people listen to his podcast. And it was, trust me, this was quoted all over the blogosphere, all over the things, because that's how we set the question up. And she quantifies here and vacillates a little bit for a while, but probably, and I think does a pretty good job at that. But here's her response.
It's an interesting hypothetical. You've started off with the right hook here is if this would help Alaskans, because at the end of the day,
I know you.
Yeah, you
I've
do.
done my reading.
Yeah, see? This is why this book is kind of scary, because now people know what motivates me, and it's this love for Alaska and what I can do.
You notice how she brings it back to the book, right? Oh, it's because of my book. My book is this is why my book is kind of scary, because now you see behind them, you know what I'm doing, kind of thing. She goes on.
So that's my primary goal. I have to figure out how I can be most effective for the people that I serve. That's why I'm going to continue to do a really hard job, because I want to try to help people. My problem with your hypothetical is that as challenged as I think we may be on the Republican side, I don't see the Democrats being much better. And they've got not only their share of problems, but quite honestly, they've got some policies that I just inherently disagree with.
Which is, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised to hear her say this, right? This is definitely kind of the more middle of the road, moderate approach. She's not full-throatedly endorsing or embracing the Democratic Party she's saying they've got problems and policies I don't agree with. And so, I mean, I think that was a good way to stake out that position in that regard and say it in that way. She might win some points on that. The problem is, even if you disagree with those positions, then you shouldn't do things that help bolster and support those positions. Even if you don't agree with a specific position, you shouldn't really be giving ground to help their cause in that way. But this is where she's at. So again, we're going to continue.
They've got not only their share of problems, but quite honestly, they've got some policies that I just inherently disagree with. One of the things that I thought was interesting in the book when we're writing it was this whole effort
She's back to the book again. She's back to the book. Don't forget, I'm pitching my book, which, I mean, God love her. That's what you're there for. I get it. But again, back to my book. One of the reasons why I wrote this book
was this whole effort prior to me deciding that I was going to launch the write-in. People were looking at what happened after the primary, and they said the only way that you are going to retain this seat is if you basically have your name on the ballot, and the only way to do that is to basically carry the flag of the Libertarian Party, because that was the only party outside of the Republicans and Democrats. And so they said, basically, can you be a libertarian for a day to get elected?
Okay, so here's the problem with this. Libertarians, as contrary as we may be, and as cantankerous, and we will also, I think, in a lot of ways, we refuse to be used in that regard, because she doesn't really have a libertarian bone in her body. She is very much a government is the solution to the problems kind of thing. That's the problem. She is very much government is the answer, where libertarians are government is the problem. So this kind of whole idea was a false premise to begin with, right? Was a false premise to begin with. But she did, I think, come out with the right answer when this was presented to her, to say you should run as a libertarian. That's the only way. Well, of course, we know historically, she won in a different way, but this was her answer, to which I was pleasantly surprised.
And they dangled that in front of me, and all of the people that I was talking to said, this is, of course, what you have to do. And I said, I can't do that. I can't be somebody that I'm not. I can't now say, I want this job so much that I'm going to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. That's not who I am. And
I appreciate her for that. I do. I mean, I know we take her to task with a lot of things here on the program. We bang the drum pretty hard on a lot of this stuff, but I do appreciate the fact that she at least had enough self-awareness to say, I can't do that, because that's not who I am. I can't, now she may sell out the Republican Party. She may sell out what we would consider to be core Republican values, but she's, she at least had the wherewithal to say, I'm not going to take on another party moniker just to get the job. I guess why did she have to? Because she had the support of all these other people, including the Democrat. Poor Scott Adams. I still feel so bad for Scott Adams, but that's where it is. All right, one little more thing here before we go to break.
But I guess the question is, you wouldn't become a Democrat, right? In this situation, you would be independent. And the next time Republicans are close to a majority, you could caucus with them. But I guess I more ask, is there a world in which by becoming unaligned or an independent, you could help Alaskans, that you consider it?
There may be that possibility. And let me put it into context from where I'm from. In Alaska right now, our legislature is governed by coalition. In the Senate, I think it's, 12?
All right. So first and foremost, she says, it's a possibility. And that's where these headlines came from. Oh, she could do it. She could, she could,
There may be that possibility. And let me.
So that's where the headlines came from. There may be that possibility. That's as decisive as she gets on this question. He sticks with this question throughout the whole his whole interview is basically built around this one question. And she goes on. Now, what I find interesting, and what we're going to get into here in a second, and maybe it's just because she's so focused on the national politics of Alaska, but she doesn't even know what's going on in her own. She can't pull it right off the top. She has to go to her husband. How many people are in the legislature? I mean, it's almost painful to watch, but we'll continue on here in just a second. We're coming up on the break. The Michael Duke Show continues. We got Chris Story coming up at the end of the show today. We're going to continue here with Lisa Murkowski's interview with Galen Druke, who's a Beltway podcaster. We're going to be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. We are in the break. Sorry. I'm looking at you, kid. I'm looking at some of these things here and just shaking my head. Okay, I'm gonna delete that. We're gonna go back up here. Why so disrespectful? What am I being disrespectful about? Harold, think better of yourself, which is pretty rich coming from some of the things that you've said over the years. I mean, I'm just saying, pot, kettle, what about your cargo plane pilot jokes or your truck driver jokes about how their opinions are not worth anything because of what they do in their day-to-day life, because they're not as smart as you? So there's a little bit of self-recrimination in that whole comment. I'm just pointing that out to you. There's some hypocrisy going on there. All right. Anyway, let me go back. Count the book quotes, says Tawny. Count the book quotes. 2. Chris says, if you buy my book. Oh yeah, she keeps coming back to it. I mean, she keeps coming back to it. Now, what I found out when I was writing my book. Oh, if you get my book, you'll find it. I mean, that's what it was about, right? This is a book tour. She's doing all these things to promote her book. I mean, can't blame her for that. She's doing it, she's doing it right. Terry says, my ears are bleeding already. Come on. Miguel says she's an independent, not a Republican, which I actually agree with that. She goes on to talk a little bit more about it here in this interview. And that's really the truth. The truth is that she is more independent than Republican. It's almost like it's the flag of convenience, right? The flag of convenience is what we're looking at right here. And it has been, and it's worked out for her. So that's why we're, that's why we're here. let's see. Brian says, who is Galen Druke? Galen Druke is, again, he does a Beltway. He does a Beltway podcast, and he used to work for 538. And so you could find him out there. You could find him out there on the internet, but he's doing it. He's doing a podcast, and that's kind of where he's what he's known for. So GD Politics is what it's called with Galen Druke. Okay. Did I catch all the comments? Did I catch everything here? That's it. Okay. Name a Okay, I'm already back up. Now you guys are also hitting me with food this morning, and you should never do that in the morning. Never talk about. Chris is talking about he went to Kisilov and had breakfast at Rocky's Cafe, which I'll have to stop by there and do a chicken fried. I'll tell you right now, the best chicken fried steak that I've had in a long time was at Ginger's restaurant in Soldotna. I mean, it was it was monstrous. I couldn't finish it all. It was huge and delicious, savory, just right. Oh, so good. So good. Let's see. MD is doing a good job himself promoting the book. Hey, look, you do you, boo. If you want to buy the book, then, go ahead. I'm just making a point that this is a interesting part of the story. That's what it's all about. It's an interesting part of the story for sure. Okay. Ruben says there's a District 35 Republican meeting today at 6 p.m. at the Mayan Palace in Fairbanks. Mike Cronk will be our speaker. Okay. All right. Thank you, Ruben, for throwing that out there. I appreciate it. Okay. We're continuing now. 10 seconds out. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We get back into it right now. Let's do it. Like, share, subscribe, do all
that stuff. The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we're continuing now. We're talking about this interview that Lisa Murkowski did with Galen Druke of GD Politics. It's a Beltway podcast. Galen Druke used to be with 535. With Nate Silver and the whole thing out there. Anyway, we're continuing on this discussion that she was having, and like I said, I was pleasantly surprised that she was forthright about some of the things that happened during the 2010 write-in and some other things. But she gets deeper into some of this stuff to talk a little bit about what her overall philosophy is. But she was asked, would she join, become an independent and vote with the Democrats if they got more votes in there, if she could benefit Alaska. And she goes on to liken it to the state legislature, which, as dysfunctional as the state legislature is, I don't know if this is a good move, but here's what she says.
There may be that possibility, and let me put it into context from where I'm from. In Alaska right now, our legislature is governed by coalition. In the Senate, I think it's 12? What's the makeup in the Senate?
12, or it's 14.
Yeah. 14-6 and 21-19 in the House and in the Senate. We got a small legislature, but coalitions in both bodies. And this is one of the things that I think is good and healthy for us, and I think actually is one of the reasons why people are not surprised that I don't neatly toe the line with just party initiatives, because we've kind of embraced a governing style that says if you've got good ideas and you can work with her over there, it doesn't make any difference if you're Republican or Democrat. We can govern together for the good of the state. And so it is a coalition government. It's not a Republican majority or a Democrat majority. It is a coalition government.
And this is the problem. The problem is that the coalition. This is why I have been saying for a long time that both the Republicans and the Democrats are to blame for our fiscal situation here in the state, and we've gone over many of the reasons and reasons why. So this is a philosophical difference more than a party difference, right? The bigger government versus the smaller government, and she's just kind of outlining why the coalition is working the way it's working. It's not an alignment of party, it's an alignment of philosophies. And she, again, is one that believes that state government, government is good. Government is the answer to the questions, which is exactly what members of these coalitions believe. And unfortunately, that's not what Alaskans didn't vote for a coalition. Most of them, I think if you ask them, voted for a party candidate hoping that they would identify with what the party values are, because maybe they don't know a lot about the candidate, but they see the label next to their name and that's what they vote for. That's the thing. And this is a Republican majority. There is a Republican majority in both bodies. Unfortunately, you've got members in there who are Republicans, I guess, to use the euphemism, in name only. And they are instead, it's not a question of Republican versus Democrat. It is it more government people or less government people? That's the question. She goes on.
So
if
could
Democrats
we do
won
that?
3
seats in the next election and offered you ways to pass bills that benefit Alaskans, if you caucused with them, you'd consider it.
If we're talking about some kind of a coalition, that's something that, again, is not foreign to Alaskans. Is it foreign to our operations in the Senate? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because we have been a two-party state, a two-party system in this country for so long. The idea of a coalition is so foreign. Now, you get into England or some of these other ones where they've got all these different, majority bodies that are made up of a half a dozen different parties and things like that. It does. But yeah, here it's unthinkable. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. I'm just saying at this point, it is unthinkable. We've got a binary choice, red or blue, right? Donkey or elephant. And people just can't wrap their brain around the other thing. And by doing that, by identifying by party, they've also abrogated their responsibilities to look deeper into what each candidate actually stands for. And so part of the problem is the two-party system, because they just assume that because somebody has a donkey next to their name or an elephant or whatever, that they will adhere to what they believe that stands for, instead of looking deeper into the track record, the voting record, the interviews, to what people have said. This is part of the problem in a larger way, in my opinion.
It's not foreign in other governing bodies. You look at the makeup in so many other countries. So I'm evading your answer, of course, because it is so supremely hypothetical. But you can tell that the construct that we're working with right now, I don't think is the best construct.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you're saying yes.
But he's coming back. But it sounds like you're saying yes. I mean, and she's kind of saying what I'm saying. It's not kind of the best construct. It's what we have. It would be nice to be able to split this out and to have more choices and more parties. It would be nice if people actually took the time to figure out what a candidate actually stood for and not just vote for them because they have an R next to their name. But the likelihood of that happening is very low right now, because the two parties are not going to relinquish control of the system that they have it right now. We've been this way for 200 years, right? And it's not going to change in the near future. It would be nice if it would. And well, I mean, quite honestly, it would be nice if Americans would take, again, responsibility for actually looking at what their political figures actually believe and what their voting record is. But that's not where they're at right now. But again, Galen Druke, he's trying to, sounds like a yes.
But it sounds like you're saying yes.
Is it something that is worthy of exploration? See, you're looking to make news today. Murkowski's going to head a coalition government.
I'm the little guy here. Help me. Don't give it to.
She calls him out on it. I mean, he's looking to make a headline, and of course, it worked because that was the headline. Murkowski says she'll jump to the Democrat. She'll become an independent. Which is, again, she hedged all over the place. She said it's something that's, again. She is, just because she has an R doesn't make her a Republican, folks. I think Miguel said it earlier in the chat room. She's an independent. And you know what? Under this current ranked choice voting system, I don't know why she just doesn't mark herself. She'd still win as an independent under ranked choice voting, right? Because they would still, it doesn't matter. It's the top 4 vote getters. Anyway, so we're going to continue.
I hear, help me. Don't give it to CBS. Don't give it to ABC. Give it to me.
Well, and this is one of the things where when we talk about like election reform and ways that we can actually break down some of these really partisan divides that come up, I think it's some of the things that we're seeing in a place like Alaska, where we're talking about coalitions that come together, where you have ranked choice voting that encourages people. You have a greater likelihood of being elected if you are not viewed as just the holy partisan, but you're liked by
Again, she's going back now to the ranked choice thing and basically saying what they've been saying all along, what a lot of proponents have been saying, not in public, but in the more scholarly analytics of what happens with ranked choice voting. Basically, they're saying that those who are more strident on the edges, I think they would say on the extremes of one form or another, meaning far left or far right, they're the ones that are taken out in ranked choice voting. The middle ground wins. That's what again, in the analytics, they don't tell you that when they're promoting it on the air, but when you have some kind of scholarly analysis of it, they're saying that's what happens, is it weeds out the more passionate on the left or the right, who are more conservative or more liberal in that regard, and it seeds it with that middle ground.
Not viewed as just the holy partisan, but you're liked by you're supported by a group over here. Plus, there's a lot of folks that really like you as your number 2, and so this idea of kind of melding different political thoughts. I don't know if that's the way I want to phrase it. If I saw that in writing, I probably would disagree. But it is a different way of looking at how we are addressing our problems, rather than just saying it's red and it's blue.
I do want to ask specifically about Alaska's system. I'm, pretty nerdy. I've done whole docuseries about gerrymandering and different types of voting and the like. But and I'm going to move on to that. But was that a yes? That yes, there's some openness to it.
He just will not let this go. Here's Murkowski's final comment on the question of will she become an independent and vote with the Democrats?
There is some openness to exploring something different than the status quo. How's that?
Okay. All right. I'll take it.
So that's a big chunk of the interview with Galen Druke. And again, I appreciate the fact that she comes out and basically says, I wouldn't do this because this, but she obviously believes that, ranked choice voting is the best way. She wants to form coalition. What I got out of this whole interview is that it solidified my view that she is basically another person who believes that government is the answer to the solution. And if you have to work with other people, with Democrats in the coalition, she again, loving what's going on in Alaska, where most of us who are more conservative are hating what's going on with Alaska. It just kind of shows kind of her position on it. But I appreciated her openness about it. And I appreciated the fact that she was trying to pitch her book. So that was some interesting stuff. interesting stuff out there as well. You can go out there and find the whole thing on the GD Politics, Galen Druke podcast. If you want to go out and listen to it, the whole thing, you can. I took the important part out so that you don't have to. That was an interesting take. I've been wanting to get to this for a little bit because I haven't had Lisa Murkowski on this program in 15 years. It's been, at least 15 years since she's been on the program, because she doesn't like to be asked. He was nice about asking some questions, but she does not like to be asked some hard pointed questions. And so she hasn't been on this program in years. In fact, I've run into her several times over the last 10 years, and she just ignores me. She doesn't even make eye contact. I apparently made her angry. I don't know what I did. I don't know exactly what I did, but it was bad, apparently. All right, we got to go. We got more coming up. Chris Story's coming up next. Oh, people in the chat room are heated about the fact that I did this. Sorry, guys. They're just like, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. You got to listen to what's going on the other side, folks. You got to listen. You got to hear what's being said. You got to do some analysis of it. All right, we got to go. Back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
What did we learn from this segment? Asked Frank. First of all, Frat Ray says, brother, it was one person. Chat is fine. Well, there's a couple people in there. I'm sorry. Maybe I overstated it. I'm sorry, Fat Ray. I'm just, Frank says, what did we learn from this segment? I think what I learned was that Lisa is a little bit more self-aware and willing to say more plainly in some situations, where she's coming from. And I appreciated that. It didn't change my overall viewpoint on her, but I at least appreciate the fact that, but although Brian did say, what did Brian say that I caught? He said, when I said, at least she didn't try and take the libertarian thing and acknowledged it. Brian said, but she knew she would be rejected by the libertarians outright. So that was an easy answer. True. I did say that as well. I think they would have seen through that. So it was an easy answer in that way, although probably not as easy as we would like to think with everybody pushing on her the way she did. And ultimately she won. She won through the write-in campaign. So it's, we also learned that she's not above self-promotion. My book, if you read my book, you'll learn that, right? So anyway, very, 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 very interesting stuff. All right. let's get Chris on the show, shall we? Shall we do that? Shall we get Chris Story on the phone? See what's happening there. See if we can get this thing working. Hey, look at that. First time.
Good morning. Good morning, sir. Yes, worked first time is a charm.
First time's a charm. How are you, my friend?
I'm on top of the world. Fantastic. No complaints.
You're ready to go. Last couple of days have been.
I will say.
Huh? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Whatever. Let's just move on. I do miss one thing, and here's what I miss. I miss being able to lord over you. That I'm down here in Homer on top of the world. And now that you're here and you're actually lording over me from Diamond Ridge, I don't know. I feel like I've lost some edge or advantage.
You've lost the edge. Getting soft in your old age. I'm looking down on you, Story. I'm looking down.
Yeah. So that's a little disappointing because I can always hear that resentment and envy in your voice. And you're up there in the valley or wherever you live. Who cares? And it was just like, it wasn't here. And now that you're here,
right?
No, it feels more equal.
It feels more equal. Only in your mind is it equal. But I mean, okay, that's okay. It's okay. Yeah, we're. Oh, right. Melissa says, take a shot every time she says my book. We should take a shot every time Chris says my book. Okay. Every time Chris says my book, my book.
Hey, in my book, that's a great drinking game.
My books, the Backyard Millionaire, Born to Live. We should just Making a Man. We should, we should. Every time he mentions the book, we should all just take a shot. That's how it works.
That's funny. I thought she had my back.
Yeah, well, no, she was talking about Lisa Murkowski in the last segment, which you weren't listening to. So it was anyway, because Lisa turned around every time during the interview she had that I was playing that, and in my book. Oh, and because I wrote the book, and that's the fear about the book. And because she's on a book tour. I don't know if you know. I mean, have you had Lisa Murkowski on your program anytime in the last 10 years?
No, invited. I was to do an interview with her, and then her handler said, "Oh, but she needs you to come out to Land's End and interview her there." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I'm not going to move my whole studio out to anyway." So I just said, pass. And I've moved on. I've been okay absent that in my life.
Yeah. No, I think I said the last time she was on the program was 15 years ago, maybe 18 years ago. She was on the program, and she left angry. So and I've never seen her back on the show since, because I don't even remember what we talked about. I'm sure I just asked some questions that were, again, not hurtful, not angry, just questions. The same thing happened with Don Young, where he basically never came back on the program again because he just didn't like the fact that I asked some hard questions, which I thought is my job. I mean, I don't know. I thought that was my job, Chris.
I found the same thing with Senator Sullivan, who was, always best friends with you while he's running for office. And then I did ask a few, just not even tough questions, but I just kind of pressed on a few different things, and that those relationships all fell apart.
Yeah,
it's either you go along and get along. It's like, look, I'm not a journalist. I'm not going to go push and everything, but I am curious about a few things that I thought were relevant. And again, I'm just ready for a change. To your point, it's time to chart of change.
Yeah,
all new blood.
All new blood. What are we talking about today, Chris?
The need for creed.
The need for creed?
Mm.
Is that what you said? Like Apollo Creed?
Yeah, you got it.
The need.
There you go.
The need for creed.
Rocky.
The need for creed. All right. Chris Story, our guest. We're going to continue with him here, the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay, one final segment for our Tuesday show, and that means we bring the master of disaster. The guru of positivity. Sorry, that was the other one. Chris Story, the man from Homer. I can look down on him all day from up here and see him down there on top of the world, although still lower than me. Chris Story, ilovehomeralaska.com. Hello, my friend.
Good morning. Thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure.
It's always good to have you on. So today you're going to talk about Rocky, Apollo Creed. No, just creeds. Why we're going to have a creed. What's your story today? Story? What are we talking about?
So Ayn Rand immigrated from Russia when she was 20 and went to Los Angeles and became immersed in Hollywood and wrote scripts, and then eventually wrote a book called The Anthem, and then wrote The Fountainhead, and then obviously her masterwork Atlas Shrugged. While she was developing these ideas and thinking about the difference between communist Russia, which she escaped from, and her parents were still there, and her family were still there, and she never spoke to them or saw them again in her life. And then reflecting on capitalism and the difference and what drew her here, and the idea of capitalism, or the idea of America that drew her here to this great free land. It was said of her that her objectivism, which was a philosophy she created, and it started in the book in the Anthem, and then fleshed out a little in Fountainhead, and then really became whole and toothsome, if you will, which is just a fun word to say, in Atlas Shrugged. And it was said of her that Ayn Rand could identify, could speak on, could think about and talk and debate about her philosophy, objectivism, as though she were describing a kitchen chair, meaning she knew it so well. There is nothing that could trip her up. She knew her own philosophy so well that it was something she could, again, just describe as simply as you or I could looking at a kitchen chair. In her mind's eye, it was that clear. And I started thinking about that the other day as I was reading my book, The Millionaire Code. Thank you, Melissa. Available now at ilovehomeralaska.com. And I was thinking about this idea of a creed, which is, look, I've opened the show for several years now with the Millionaire Creed. Prior to that, on Top of the World, it's always been the Optimist Creed. And my own personal creed, I have one. And I think every one of us should have one. A defining philosophy by which you live, principles by which you'll never break. There's not even a decision. This is a commitment, a personal commitment to a philosophy, a core set of principles, and it doesn't have to be original. You could take it from the Bible. You could take an amalgamation of all different things in your life that you feel are important, or things that you've studied or learned, or families, traits that have been handed down, familial behaviors and things that you just know inside and out, but create this very simplistic creed or a philosophy, call it whatever you want. I like creed, especially because it rhymes with need, and I was able to give you the segment today of the need for creed, but also have the backyard millionaire creed in my book. That's right, The Millionaire Code.
Available at ilovehomeralaska.com.
That's right. But just an idea, Michael. I just thought, I know you have a personal guiding philosophy. I know probably many of your listeners do. We maybe all do. Have you refined it? Can you define it? I'm reading a book right now called Winning the Image Game, which is written by Bobby G, G-E-E. And she was a very popular speaker and presenter and motivator around the country, a business consultant in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s. And she talks about this idea of an image. And your image isn't just what you look like, although that can play a role in it. The image is what you stand for first, not just what people think about you. What do you stand for? That creates your image. That creates the shadow or reputation, which will then, of course, be what people think about you. When you think about a brand, it can be their logo, it can be their product, but more than anything, you're probably looking at the results of having a very hard, fastened down creed or mission or a foundation of their image. And then we get to see the results of it.
When you think of a creed, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around this a little bit. The creed, is that it's not your chief definite aim. It's more of a personal mission statement. Is that kind of more accurate? What do you see?
I think so. I think that's mission. You know what the problem with the phrase mission statement is? That it's been so watered down and overwrought, beat into our heads like, have a mission statement. Think about an off-site somewhere where you're doing trust falls and you have to listen to everybody's dumb idea about the company and where it should go and this and that. But basically that's it. Even if you do a mission statement correct, you start out with a foundation that is rock solid. That can be your principles. It can lead towards a definite chief aim, which I know you and I are both fans of Napoleon Rich and Think and Grow, Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, and Napoleon Dynamite, also another great thinker and philosopher in this space. I love that movie. Anyway, it's essentially, it will inform your definite chief aim. It will inform what you do, but it's why you do what you do. It's the foundation. It's not just the product. Because you can have, let's just say your radio stations, for example, you're going to have a ton of different products. It's the guiding principles behind them, the transmitter and everything that's allowing the new ideas, the new products to flow forward based on your mission. And that's based on undoubtedly freedom of speech. And that's based on this incredible Constitution and protection of our rights, our inalienable rights. So it all can come back to and stem from whatever guiding philosophy you wish to adhere to. But do you know it? Can you say it in a couple of sentences? If you and I are riding in an elevator, can you articulate it to me before we get to the third or fourth floor? And so it's not an elevator speech or pitch per se, but it can be. But it's, do you know it so well?
Can you concise
your own guiding philosophy?
Can you concise it down into a small, to a small couple sentences or paragraphs? Well, give us an example. If we all have a need for a creed, are you comfortable sharing your personal creed with us, Chris? Are you comfortable sharing that with us? I mean, should we,
Yes, even though for Melissa's sake, it's not in my book, but what I do have in my book is the Millionaire Creed, and that I say every week, and that's no big deal. But the person, I mean, it's not no big deal. I'm just saying it's not something that I would shy away from sharing. It's something I'm hoping to share with the world because I think it's influential, and I want to help as many people as I can, which stems from my actual personal creed, which is to serve, influence, inspire, motivate, and be a positive force in as many people's lives as possible. And through which I write, I speak, I sell. I consider selling to be one of the highest callings on earth, because to sell is to influence. To sell is to change or help somebody change their own life. It isn't a matter of just making a quote unquote sale. It's about influence. It's about serving in a way that helps somebody become something that they never thought possible. Like to see somebody reach that net worth millionaire status, or to create the first, you hear a lot of people say, oh, it's the first one to go to college in my family. Sometimes I'm dealing with people that's the first person to own a home in their family for generations.
Right.
That is
right.
so impactful and powerful. So to me, that is the essence of everything I do, to serve, influence, inspire, motivate, and be a positive force in people's lives. Do I make mistakes and end up being, opposite, or do something
a
that's
negative influence
once in a while? Yeah, once in a while, and I say some things that I wish I had put it differently, but I'll come back to that core philosophy, and it's almost like riding the ship and going, nope, this is where I'm headed. This is my guiding light. This is what I'm here for.
Is it something that you reflect on daily? I mean, is it something you get up in the morning and you say your own creed to yourself, and you're like, today is the day that I influence and do all that?
Yep, absolutely. And it's just like brushing my teeth every single day. And sometimes I'll find myself I'm multiple personality. I'll find myself in maybe a negative space, some sort of a loop, a fear loop, or whatever it is. And I'll just go, hold on. And I'll use it as a way to center and a way to ground myself. And in this moment, I'll just say it to myself, that I am here to serve, influence, inspire, motivate, and be a positive force. And it's not a mantra either, like where I'm just like looking in the mirror and smiling. And no, it's not about that. It's about recentering and recalibrating towards what matters most to me. I've determined this, years ago. This is what matters most to me, whether it's in family or friends, or I'll just tell you what a friend is later, Michael. It's
I was just going to say, what's that?
Or, it's like right there. I just violated my own. Now I'm gonna have to go back. And no, I'm kidding. You're such a great sport, there's almost nothing I could say.
Almost,
I've tried.
Almost nothing.
Years.
I know you tried to hurt my feelings all these years. It doesn't work. But I'm sure you'll write a book on that, available at ilovehomeralaska.com, How to Hurt Dukes' Feelings. Look, I think it's important. I think what you've got is I think this is an important thing, all kidding aside, having a creed that you can, again, center yourself with. And I wouldn't even be offended if it was a mantra. You said, well, it's not a mantra, but it is in a way, because it helps you center back to what's important to you, and to remind you, and to use as a reminder of what it is. And everybody's got to kind of find their own. We got less than 60 seconds. Give me your final thoughts.
I don't shy away from the idea of a mantra relative. I guess it's just my interpretation of what that could mean. I don't want to dissuade anybody from taking this seriously. That, oh yeah, mantras don't work. Or the old Emile Coué, who said, he gave his patients back in the 1800s this prescription to say, in every way and every day I'm getting better and better. And it's like, okay, maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. It's personal is what I'd like. I'd love for each of us to have our own personal creed and philosophy.
Right. And again, center around it every morning and every day. I like it. You're giving me stuff to think about, which is important. If you want to think about more, get his book at ilovehomeralaska.com called The Millionaire Code. Chris Story, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
Folks, tomorrow morning, Melissa Burnett, our guest. We'll see you then. Okay. Well, that does it for me today. We're out of time. Tomorrow is another one. I won't bring out another Murkowski interview. Some people are just, it's all good. Yes, Audrey, you should write it down. Yeah, you should write it down. Audrey says, I love Chris. I have a creed, but this makes me want to write it down. Write it down. Look at it. It's amazing the power of putting something on paper in front of you. Can I tell you a story real quick before we run out of time? Let me tell you a story real quick before I run out of time. I have a notebook, and in that notebook is, you could call it Michael's great notebook of ideas, right? Of goals, of things, of dreams, of things that he wanted to do. 2 years ago, I was writing things down in the book, just ideas, little things that I would scroll. I kept it with me. If I thought about something at a stoplight or whatever, I'd write it down, or, when I was off anyway, I wrote a lot of stuff down. And one of our goals obviously was to get to Homer. And, the problem was, how do you go to Homer and how do you make a living? Right. And so one of the things that I wrote down in there was, boy, it would be nice to, kind of be able to do radio and have it, maybe radio ownership ? Right. Write that down. Maybe one day I could take, I was writing this stuff down. And here I am, right? Didn't have a plan, was just kind of writing ideas and things that I wanted to do. But there's a power in that. And there's some other things in the book that I've written down that have come true over the last 5 years, because I've had this book for 5 or 6 years. And because I wrote it down and I looked at it and I put my subconscious to work on it. And sometimes it's not just my subconscious. I'm putting it out there into the ether, right? And then one day somebody walks into my office and says, hey, we'd like to talk to you about buying radio stations. It's not something I expected, right? But it's something that I'd thought about, something that I had written down. So this is all in comment. This is all in response to Audrey's comment of, I have a creed, but this makes me want to write it down. Write it down. If you have a goal, if you have something that you want it to be your life's work, write it down. And if you want to put a date on it, put a date on it. But write it down and at least get your brain to thinking about it. It's as silly as it sounds, it works. It works when you do that. It's kind of crazy. The book is sitting out here in the other room on my dresser. And I was just thumbing through it the other day thinking, wow, look at what's happened when you write stuff down and you start thinking about it. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing stuff. Anyway, I want you all to have a great day. Tomorrow, Melissa Burnett joins us in hour 1. Oh, yeah. She says she's walking into the lion's den. I'm sure it'll be brutal for her. And then maybe somebody else. We'll see if we get a second guest as well. We're out of time for today. We will see you guys tomorrow. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll see you then. Have a good day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.